What is grief but love persevering? Vision. All right, so this week's episode is about trauma. Sorry, but it is. It's also about comic books. It's also about comedy. It's also about black people and how we use comedy to get through the trauma. But still, it's about trauma. There's nothing else to say. My guest this week is Mike Sessions. Mike is a dear friend of mine. I have no idea how long we've been friends. I really don't understand how we became friends. But nonetheless, Mike is someone who I definitely appreciate in my life. He is the host of the If I Let You Tell It podcast, a situation podcast. I don't know if you would even call it a situation podcast, but it's a podcast that has been going on for exactly a year. So this is the episode to predate the annual first anniversary of the If I Let You Tell It podcast. So without further ado, my guest today, Mike Sessions. Welcome to Creative Rec with Richard Blacksher. So hey everybody, once again, this is Creative Rec with Richard Blacksher. This is Michael Sessions, aka Mike Sessions. That's his real name. It's not a stage name that I originally thought.
I'm not that narcissistic. I swear I'm not.
Yeah, here we are. Mike Sessions, I admire. He's a writer. He is a host of a podcast. All around, he will tell you right now what he does, and which is kind of why I brought him on. Like, what a guy like you, what do you do? What have you done, and what do you do now?
I mean, for the most part, well, hello to anybody that's listening and watching. Yeah, man, my name is Mike Sessions, and for the most part, I've always been into the arts of video making, filmmaking. I'm just now getting into podcasting. I started a podcast last August called the If I Let You Tell It podcast, and I'm a father of two. But for the most part, I've worked in education for the most part. But right now, pandemic daddy has hit us all, unfortunately. And right now, I'm at the crib with him. I'm sitting at home and just trying to get my media stuff back together. So that's what I do for the most part.
That makes sense. I guess I do want to ask, if there is something you could talk about for 30 minutes. But I mean, even before that, you said my introduction to you, of course, was when we were in college around the same time. We went to different colleges, but we had the same circles. Right. And we have a mutual friend who will be on a later episode named Antonio Johnson.
Antonio.
Shout out Antonio, who also has a podcast. And he showed me, hey, this is a guy that I go to school with. Check out this video; it's hilarious. And he showed me a video of someone who was you doing a parody of Soulja Boy's "Pretty Boy Swag," but it wasn't like. There was nothing. Nothing
swaggy about it.
Nothing swaggy about it. It was you rubbing your knees in the dirt with a song we now refer to as Ashy Ass Knees.
My life story, man. Nothing swaggy about me, man. But sometimes you gotta live in the dirt. Sometimes you gotta, you know what I mean?
Right. So Mike, is there something you could talk about for like 30 minutes uninterrupted? Like, just educate me.
Absolutely, man. It's something that you and I have also talked about a little bit off camera. WandaVision. That's one thing that I'm definitely on right now. Best show on television right now. Debate me. Okay.
You're not wrong. It's great. It's great.
I
hated it at first. I hated on it at first.
Yeah, you was hating on it. I was like, what? I would have thought that you, being the person that you watched a lot of film, you're very knowledgeable on a lot of film, music, shows, different stuff like that, and literature. I thought that you probably would have kind of saw the setup that it was going to get better as it went on, but you was not so sold at the beginning.
I'll be honest, I wasn't. You're right. They definitely played me for the okie doke because I feel like I think writers know their fan base now.
Right.
And actually, that's something we could probably jump into. I think it's let me not say it's harder for writers, but I feel like writers, we have to come up with different hooks now where, off the jump for me, I was thinking like, oh, it's going to be a Miss Wanda.
Right.
But here we have it's a show within a show where she's like, based on the first 2 episodes or 3 episodes, I was like, oh, she's just going to be like trapped in this sitcom, and it's gonna be like, oh, Wanda has to figure out how to get out.
Yeah.
I had every single week they, and I'm gonna put it like this. I know a lot about comic books. I know a lot about X-Men. I've said this before. X-Men is like how I graduated college. Like I wrote my senior paper
Right.
on comparing X-Men to the Civil Rights Movement. So I know a lot about X-Men. Wanda, of course, is one of the X-Men and an Avenger. So
Mm-hmm.
Wanda is one of those people that like scares the hell out of me whenever I think about like comic book lore.
Mm-hmm.
Um, every single week though, they dive deeper and deeper into stuff that I never knew.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to, let this be a podcast for spoilers, but like even this by the time this podcast airs,
It'll
WandaVision will
be
be
over
over.
by now.
But the episode that just happened, we see. I mean, it'll be over by now.
Chef's
Um,
kiss.
but we see White Vision, which is again, it's in the comics, but like
Right.
I've never heard of White Vision until like yesterday.
Yeah. It's gonna get
So
even more heartbreaking now that White Vision is in, because White Vision literally has no soul. Like he's super robotic. I mean, the first Vision really didn't have a soul,
right,
but he was so complex where and so even with, you remember what Tony Stark said in I believe it was Infinity War, when he was talking to Bruce Banner, and he was like, like they're evolving. Like, you know what I mean? Like Vision is evolving. And part of that was him like starting to feel emotions and stuff like that for Wanda. And with White Vision, he's none of that. He's just
yeah,
he don't remember Wanda. He don't remember his kids. Like he was super just like, I'm not your daddy. I'm not your husband. I don't know who you people are. And just see the grief that she's already going through with everything. It's just gonna get even worse for her.
yeah, and
I'm
it's.
just
I mean, you kind of hit the head on the nail with that. Like, the last episode. We'll just talk about it. We'll just talk about the last episode. This last episode that happened. There's a quote that people are sharing around Twitter, and I'm realizing now how many people don't know to spell the word persevere.
like,
Because people are saying preserve instead of persevere, but it's a good quote. What is grief but love persevering?
mm-hmm,
And I think that kind of is the theme, or for my students who might be watching this, life lesson
mm-hmm,
from this whole show. Um, Grief is a natural thing,
yeah,
especially with so much stuff that is being lost in this pandemic that we're going through,
right,
this post election cycle that we're going through right now.
mm-hmm,
Looking at this brand new president, we're all going through grief right now.
mm-hmm.
um how do you kind of relate to that, when especially as a writer? How do you see that in a WandaVision, or do you see that in any other shows or movies that have come out recently where there's no like main big bad guy? It's
Right,
grief that's
yeah,
kind of the villain.
it's good. Well, for one, her character has been in multiple movies so far, but we never really got to see so much of the character development. Like we saw, like, we heard the stories of this happened to her parents. We saw what happened to her brother. Um, but I think even just like as an African American male, like um, it's interesting when you think about like how many times we put sometimes our grief on the back burner, in hopes of just sweeping things under the rug to keep it pushing, to keep it moving, whereas it is important to sit in your grief sometimes and deal with it head on. And I think that's what Wanda finally had to do in this movie, not movie, this TV show, and face the things that she's been running from this whole time, and kind of finding excuses as to how she deals with it. And I just think, as somebody who is Black, who well, everybody deals with grief, but with us, we've been taught from the beginning to suck it up and be strong and keep it pushing. But that's not the way to really handle something like like grief. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
important.
especially when you're talented, right? I
Right.
mean, uh not to put us in like an egotistical situation, but I mean, you and I are both talented people.
Okay.
um and I feel like sometimes it's hard for us. I'll be blunt. It's easy for me to be like, Yeah, I'm dealing with this emotion. I'm dealing with this loss. I'm gonna go make an album.
Right.
Instead of like, like
Hmm.
the term is shadow work.
Yeah.
Dealing with, like processing what happened. You, however, I kind of commended you on this when I came in on your podcast.
Hmm.
You kind of took that as a creative, and
Hmm.
instead of like waiting for the opportunity to say, okay, well, I'm gonna do this podcast, and then this
Hmm.
podcast is gonna be specifically for this kind of thing.
Right.
What I've seen you do as I continue to listen and listen as if I let you tell it evolves. It started off as like you kind of processing out loud like
Hmm.
your grief,
Right. Right. Right.
the choices that you made, and I don't want to say the consequences, but just how you have what your life brought you to now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then even now, as the podcast continues to grow, and you brought in Brother D, it really is a lot more like, how do I say? You are still processing out loud, but it kind
Yeah.
of does turn into, well, now let's all have an actual conversation about what is
About what is actually going on outside of just me. You know
right.
what I mean? Like how do all of this play a factor in what I was feeling initially? You know what I
Yeah,
mean? We somewhat kind of disguise some of it as, jokes, but these are like real life conversations that I think that people should have, whether it's about relationships, whether it's about marriage, whether it's about your dynamic with your parents, or even just day to day, just being unemployed. And, like, yeah, we make jokes about it, but it's a lot of truth in those jokes that we do make, because I never aim to have a podcast where I just like I feel like I'm crying the entire time over a span of multiple seasons about my life, like what was me. Like I never wanted to do that, but I felt like I got, for the most part, some of the more important things out of the way. And if you listen to season one, I think it gives a little bit more depth to season two as to how I speak about other things. So you kind of know my psyche on things going into season two, and why I feel the way I feel about things. So while I'm still trying to process and figure out what I'm actually doing and where I'm going, you know.
you I mean, yeah, I kind of want to touch back on what you said. So you guys do disguise a lot of stuff as jokes. I think,
Mhm.
again, I got to keep it PG just in case I show this to eighth
For
graders.
sure, for sure.
But the last episode I checked in on, you asked a question to, I believe Ray
Brother
was the
D.
guest.
Oh, Ray,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and it was about relationships, and it's one of those things where it's like, wow, like if that was not worded, if that
Right.
was not said in a joke, that definitely it's a conversation that could have been taken off. It could have taken off the
Yeah.
rails.
Right, right, right.
What do you feel like that kind of part? Does that go back to something that, like, I don't want to say, is it intentional? I guess I'll be blunt. Is that something intentional, or is that just something that Black people do?
Oh man, that's a double-edged sword, because I think it's both. Um, I think even like with my approach and asking some question that seem a little off the wall, I think sometimes you have to approach it delicately, like a joke, whereas like you're just being silly, for people not to be so defensive about your approach about it. But it's like you can get some real answers after asking a joking question. You know what I mean? It's just you also got to know who your guest is. And I'm not about to ask that question to my mom. You know what I mean?
Right.
like
Right.
like you got to kind of know beforehand who you're talking to, but it also goes with just reading the room. But I think, yeah, I think it's a both. I think Black people look at our comedy styles and stuff, like, like we turn a lot of our trauma into art. We turn a lot of, like, whether it's podcasting, whether it's music. You always hear like people say my favorite music from somebody was when they were the most hurt, or like,
Yeah, I've been listening to a lot of Adele lately, and it's like, wow, like,
yeah,
when she's heartbroken, man, she's
yeah.
so good. We
My
same with
best
Mary J.
example,
Blige. We don't like,
Mary J. Blige. I listen to Mary every week.
we don't. I mean, yeah, we don't like it when Mary J. Blige is happy. There's actually, it's funny, like, it's funny we bring that up. There's a metalhead that I know that I play with. He plays guitar, and we had like a conversation one day about like what are the songs that just make you cry. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, for me, it's Lately by Stevie Wonder. Someone else in
Hmm.
the room was like, oh, it's such and such song. And then and again, metalhead.
Hmm.
Um, like comes to like fast guitar, like this is that guy. And I
Right.
was like, so we were like, yo, what's your song that makes you cry? And he was like, No Lie, No More Drama by Mary J. Blige.
Yeah. Or
Every
Not
time
Gonna
I
Cry.
no, he was like literally, he was like, every time I hear No More Drama, I break out in tears. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's
It's a real thing. And it goes back to what we were talking about even with WandaVision is I think that we rely on our favorite artists, our favorite filmmakers and stuff to kind of tell our story for us sometimes without actually embracing the story that we're actually living full
mm,
on. You know, like
wow. Which is that is what Wanda is doing.
yeah, yeah, through the
She's
TV show.
through the TV show. She's yeah, it's funny how trauma does that. We latch on to the things that sheesh, especially as creative, we latch on to the things that bring us comfort
Mm-hmm.
because we don't want, and especially something like a sitcom. It's ironic. I'm looking at my desk right now.
Yeah.
This is why I keep the camera where it is. I've been going kind of crazy on the Pokemon cards from
Mm-hmm.
McDonald's. Um, and I realized something. I've known this about myself for like, decades, but like the reason why I keep playing Pokemon is because it doesn't change.
Right.
And for me, like that's my big like trauma and trigger point. Like I hate changes. I hate big changes that come unexpectedly. Pokemon, you know what you're gonna do.
Did you like math growing up?
Did I like math? I
Mm-hmm.
liked math until I got to college and I wanted to be a physics major. And then they were like, solve this equation. I was like, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, nah, I'm straight. And
Yeah.
I switched to English. But
Because the
yeah,
reason I asked that is
mhm,
because like math doesn't change. It's the same everywhere.
right.
You know
No,
what I mean?
and
And
that
I hated math because I like change. I like, but I've been through too many different situations where it's like I feel like if I'm in something that's similar all the time, I get bored easily.
mm,
And I feel like I'm stagnant in a way. Like I like to do things differently pretty often,
yeah.
switch it up. So that's why I asked that question.
No, I mean, I feel that. Yeah, I never thought of it like that either. Which is again, it's ironic because I'm in English, and I tell my kids there's no wrong answers, ever.
Hmm.
So I guess tying that into writing, how did you become? Is that why you became a writer, or is that became why you became a poet, creative in general?
My mom and my dad are both writers. Mom was more so she's been keeping a journal for decades, where she writes a bunch of her thoughts down, but she's never been public about her thoughts. My dad was more so like, I mean, you can call him a rapper. He don't really rap like that anymore, but he's always been really good with words. And I always say like rapping is just it's poetry. It's poetry with like instruments behind it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I've always been into it. Like I've been writing since a young age, but I also have a very open relationship with my parents where like we've been having honest conversations since I was a child. My mom was never kind of tried to just, like deflect me away from real life situations or tell me like, oh yeah, this is why this happened. And like, it's some bullcrap answer. Like she's always told me the real. And so that allowed me to kind of see the world for what it is, even as a young one. And yeah, I just enjoy it. I enjoy unique perspectives. I enjoy, you ask anybody that I've ever been in a relationship with, like I'm not a arguer. I'm a debater, but I'm not an arguer.
Hmm.
But it's like sometimes I just like to see people's psyches and people's perspectives on things. But I'm never going to raise my voice at you. You know,
Which is, I mean, that really kind of is a writer type thing. We
right?
do, especially someone who like yourself. I know we've talked about you finishing a script that you haven't finished yet. Uh, but that is something that we do pick up on people's personality traits.
Mm-hmm.
We do pick up on like, okay, well, this kind of person did make this decision. Like you said, Richard doesn't like change, so he must have liked math in school, which is,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to an
Yeah,
extent the truth. There's a now that I'm thinking about it, there's definitely a couple math classes I failed in high school, but
I sucked at math, bro.
yeah, but I like it. It's not like I didn't like the math. It was just like,
Right. Yeah.
um, man,
But no, like I think it's all of it is relevant, man. Everybody's situation, has relevancy to it. It's just a matter of how you want to tell your story. And because like one of my favorite sayings is two things can be true. And people sometimes think that just because you see things through one lens, that somebody else's perspective can't be as valid as yours. Somebody else's life situation can't be as valid as yours. Like, this person came from a rich family, this person came from a poor family, who had it worse. You can't dictate that,
Right.
because who defines what's worse?
Right. Yeah. You can't, you can't, boost up traumas or yeah,
Yeah.
say like, yeah, my trauma was worse than yours. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Um,
You had all the
'cause-
money in the world. Doesn't mean that your life was better than mine.
right. And again, that kind of goes back into WandaVision. When you see Monica Rambeau and she's trying to have that breakthrough with Wanda. Again, no spoilers, but a couple times that she tries to have those breakthroughs, and Wanda's just like, you don't get it, and Monica's like, I'm probably the only one that will get it.
Does get it.
Right. Like, not to mention the fact that I'm a Black woman, working for this military organization. Like, I'm here because my mom is gone. The only other maternal or parental figure that I had, other family member that I had, was Captain Marvel. She literally left. I designed her costume and she left. Like, can you imagine? Can you imagine being a 9-year-old girl? Like, that's your dream, is to design someone's costume. And
I'm telling you, bro, it's so many layers to this show. So many layers. And the fact that we're approaching the season finale, and I still got so many answers that I know they won't be able to give in a 50-minute episode.
I know.
Like, it's like, okay, because I know they're going to go into the other ones, but it's still so much to talk about. Like, because episode 8 was the storytelling, even just like how they positioned everything for somebody to really sit and deal with their trauma head on, was like,
because that is kind of what it looks like. It really kind of is like going through a door of like, okay, why did I do this? It's because I did that. Well, why did I do that? It's because I did that. And it keeps looping back and back and back until you realize that you're 5 years old.
And I love the element of going through different doors. Like, like, I love that, man. And I feel like there's only one or two things that can come out of this show. Either she is going to find a way to finally cope with what's going on, or it's going to take her completely off the rails.
I mean, again, looking at the comics, that's why I said I have no
Scarlet
idea.
Witch.
Scarlet, she's officially now the Scarlet Witch, and you have no, and that comes with the same, title and weight as Jean Grey and the Phoenix, or man, I'm trying to think of someone else, but that, Marvel does a good job. Early Marvel did a really good job of that. Especially X-Men. They did a really good job of showing what is it like to be a teenager and to have this responsibility, and you have no idea what to do with it other than what two people are telling you to do.
They're absolutely amazing at that.
Yeah. I even think of I don't know if you saw that other show. We talked about this, but the other X-Men based show about Charles Xavier's son. Legion. I didn't finish it, but again, Legion did a great job of, even in the first season, like, this is how does your trauma affect you when you're powerful, or let's keep the word talented, when you're creative? Exactly. How does trauma affect that? And you see so many creatives like Kanye West, like a Justin Bieber. I just finished watching the Billie Eilish documentary.
I need to check that out.
I'm not a Billie Eilish fan, I'm not gonna lie. And then watching the documentary solidified that I'm not a Billie Eilish fan. Because the thing for me, it was like, man, I was really rolling with it, and I I was really focusing. I wasn't listening to the music, was whatever still to me, but I was like, okay, this, it makes sense. This is a good story. And then they showed her at the Grammys, and everybody she was nominated with, like, even though I think when she got Album of the Year, it was like her, Lizzo, Ariana Grande, and I was like,
it's the politics game, man.
I was like, yeah, it is the politics. And I didn't know she was signed by Interscope, so
that makes sense.
I feel like I hijacked a lot of this conversation. Continue, but go. Anything else about WandaVision?
I mean, I don't want to do any like real life spoilers because I just think that it's a terrific show, man. That it it continues to do what Marvel has been doing, since when they, well, if you think about the MCU in the sense, since '08 with the first Iron Man movie, they don't just have these people be just superheroes, and like you don't even really look at these movies as superhero movies, like because there is such a human element to these characters where you kind of followed them for this long and you kind of see why they're doing what they're doing, why they're at. I mean, they haven't done the absolute best job with Hulk, but I know why, because of the right
It's all
situation.
politics. Yeah.
Yeah,
It
but
all goes back to politics.
because I feel like the Hulk character and could be, oh man, it's so much that can go with Bruce Banner, but that they
Yeah.
can't touch on really.
And that's the
So
thing. And I mean, hopefully we'll see. I know they're doing a She-Hulk, but
yeah.
again, going back to any of those, the She-Hulk, Amadeus Cho. I just realized if you saw Age of Ultron,
Mhm.
um, Amadeus Cho's mom is the one that helps create Vision. So that means
Oh,
that
in the
means
comics.
yeah. So that means no in Age of Ultron, the lady that Ultron kidnaps and makes her build Vision.
Oh wow.
That's Dr. Cho, and that's Amadeus Cho, aka the totally awesome Hulk. That's his mom.
See, man.
Right. Again, and I'll be trying to tell you and Antonio, man, Paige, Ultron
He's that guy. I
is
feel like he's gonna come back. He's gonna
Ultron
come
has
back.
to come back. He has
Yeah.
to. Okay, let's go ahead and kind of wrap this up.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you this question.
Mm,
Now that we've talked for about close to 30 minutes.
mm,
So Michael Sessions, how I'm probably gonna do this is I'm gonna intro you with this is this album that I believe that this album or this book that I believe you relates to you, and especially keeping in mind about all the things that we've talked about today. We've talked about trauma. We've talked about what it means to be a Black creative dealing with
mm,
trauma, and of course, that's inspired by our conversation about WandaVision
mm.
and things like that. So, which brings me to my next question: why is J. Cole only relevant because he has the flow of a New York rapper in 2004?
I don't think J. Cole is only relevant because he has the flow of a New York rapper.
That wasn't the question.
I don't
Why
even
is
think that he raps like a New York. All right, repeat the question then again.
why is J. Cole only relevant because he has the flow of a New York rapper from 2004?
I know what you want me to say, and I'm with the nostalgia element to it.
This is your question. You can answer
Well,
your
I'll
question however you
respond with
want.
I don't think that he has a rap style of a New York rapper from 2004. I mean, he definitely don't sound like he's from North Carolina, that's for sure. But what do I mean, you think about Fonte from North Carolina, and they have similar rapping styles.
So you would agree that J. Cole is only
I just don't
relevant.
think it sounds like a New York rapper from 2004. No.
So you would agree that Fonte, whose debut album with Little Brother, The Listing, came
Mm.
out around 2003, 2004, which was in direct competition to uh, New York rappers because Ninth
Isn't that when
Wonder.
J. Cole moved to New York?
I think that is also when J. Cole moved to New York. So would you say that J. Cole is only relevant because he has the flow of a New York rapper from 2004?
I think J. Cole is a multifaceted. How you say multifaceted? How you say it? English.
Multifaceted, because multifaceted is like when you have a bathroom with two faucets. And
I think J. Cole is one of the most important artists of our generation, and his new mixtape comes out soon, and I can't wait to listen to it. That's my answer to your question.
all right, everybody, that's Michael Sessions, aka Mike Sessions, aka he likes J. Cole because he
Love
doesn't
J.
really
Cole.
believe in any other good music. Where can people find you, and
Yeah,
what are you doing? What do you
the
do?
music on me. So that the music on me. You can, if you can't spell that, don't follow me. I'll say that all the time. It's one word. That's on Instagram. That's also on Twitter. I'm not really on Facebook, so don't look for me there. Also themusicomey.com. And if you can, I have a podcast called If I Let You Tell a Podcast. The Instagram page for that is the podcast for you. That's all also one word. So yeah, definitely give us a follow. Check out the content and shout out Richard Blackshear.
I don't need a shout out. It's my name is literally gonna it's gonna be like right there. All right. Okay, I'm gonna stop recording here. All right, thanks, man. So we take that trauma, we unpack it. Maybe we unpack it through sports, through activity, through putting extra hours into our work, maybe through letting off a few jokes about relationships or fathers or mothers. That grief comes from a place of love, needing love, and ultimately finding the magic within yourself to love yourself better. Once again, this is Creative Rec with Richard Blackshirt.